It's Monday, so welcome to the week ahead. Of course, we have Andrew. Andrew Wong, the publisher of the Harper Times. And so what happened to the week ahead in LegCo towards the end of the legislative year? Right?
All right, we're looking we're looking straight ahead, full steam ahead. Okay, let's see what's going on. Okay, Vincent, glad to be back. First thing we're looking at is right now, while you and I are having this show, our LegCo is sitting down to talk about the special stamp duty.
Oh, yeah.
In LegCo, whether it's the BSD, the buyer stamp duty, the SSD, the special stamp duty. Yesterday we had the big rally, which was mostly about the double stamp duty, but also to a lesser extent protesting against those two. It is a hot topic right now. People are very concerned about the government kind of reaching in and starting to try and fine-tune the market and trying to bring down prices with all these stamp duties they've been bringing in. Big debate going on about that right now, and that is going to be going on all week. The anti-tax forces are ramping up. Like I said, they had their big rally yesterday, marched all the way from Victoria Park right down to LegCo, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops as those forces against the stamp duties gather steam.
Well, some legislators, including the EXCO member Starry Lee, estimated that with the current pace, the Legislative Council may not be able to pass the bill.
That's entirely possible, yeah.
Yeah, by next week, because they have the last meeting next week, right? They have the last assembly next week.
Both the Democratic forces and the Liberal Party and the DAB have serious concerns about this bill. And when you put that all together, it starts to look pretty tough for the government to put this one through. The question is whether the government can do something to bring on side their traditional allies to get the bill through. But I think people are starting to figure out the impact of these things, and it ain't good. And they're not happy, and so the government's going to have a lot of pressure on this one.
Yeah, someone is dragging their feet, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, besides DSD,
what
else?
Today they're starting the debate about health insurance, whether or not we're going to have a universal health insurance where employers and employees are going to be forced to pay in on this. The debate's just kicking off on that. We want to look at some immediate things, but also to give people a little bit of a heads up, about things that'll be coming up in the future. So keep an eye on this one. Might be a little bit in the news tomorrow, but something you want to keep an eye on for sure. Also this week, Education Committee is going to be meeting on Tuesday. They're going to be talking about free kindergarten for everybody. It's through the voucher scheme right now. And once again, it's early stages of that debate. It's been talked about. Now the talk is going into legislature and into committees. Education's also talking about probably finalizing really the details of the ESF, English Schools Foundation subsidy, which the ESF has accepted, the government proposal. It is definitely getting phased out. They will probably become more like other international schools. That process is going to be going from the public debate, the government ESF debate, and now going into LegCo. So keep an eye on that one. As well, there's going to be discussions today or tomorrow about how many live cattle are allowed to be brought into Hong Kong. People concerned about the price of beef, kind of an out-of-pocket, type issue. So they're going to be looking at that. And then on Wednesday, council.
Oh, yeah. Because I think that normally happens, isn't it? Because they know that next Wednesday will be their last meeting.
Yep.
So actually, this Wednesday, because of safety reason, they don't want to put it the last meeting. They put a lot of bills, issues, matters, and try to get it passed on the second last week.
Absolutely. Because if those things get held over, if I was a Politico and I wanted to take an issue and drag it out over the summer, I'd try to ambush the government in the last meeting.
Of course.
And stall it out. So they're trying to get a lot of things. They've got 6 different bills that are going to final reading.
6?
6. So it's,
I thought it's the first legislative year, right? It's only the first legislative for the current term.
They're getting busy. Some of these, a lot of these things have been in the works for a long time, and they're not expected to be controversial. The government has some enabling legislation for Islamic bonds.
Okay. Let us know which 6.
Okay, enabling Islamic bonds is number 1.
One.
Probably not going to be that controversial. I'm going to give you the easy ones first.
Okay.
Bringing air pollution control, bringing Hong Kong standards in line with the WHO's 2006 standards.
Okay.
All right, I don't think anyone's going to have too many problems with that. The Hong Kong Arts and Development Council is doing a little fine-tuning in terms of how they select people to go on that council.
Okay.
Trying to make it a little more open, a little more transparent. That's
the third one, but there's only a small amendments, right?
These are not. Well, they're bills. These are bills that'll be final reading, done and dusted. Arbitration. There's an arbitration agreement between Hong Kong and Macau.
That's the fourth one.
That's the fourth one. Now, those are the fairly easy ones. The ones that are a little more interesting. Number 1, there's a supplementary appropriation bill. The Hong Kong government overspent its budget by $26 billion, above and beyond what they expected to spend. That is not traditional for Hong Kong. I think that one will probably just sail through because people know it's coming. But it really is interesting because the Hong Kong government traditionally has had a tradition of underspending. And as you said, it's the first year of the administration, and here they are going over budget. They've had a lot of political pressure to kind of hand out money to all and sundry this year, and it looks like, the question is that budgetary discipline getting a little slack?
Okay, for those of you who are not so familiar with what is the appropriation bill, basically it's the budget. The appropriation bill is the actual form in legal terms of the budget.
Yeah.
But you cannot expect the financial secretary actually read out the appropriation bill because of all the legal terms and all that. But what you see or what you have heard in the budget will become the appropriation bill, and that's what the budget debate is about. And now you're telling me, just not too long ago they passed the appropriation bill. Now they ask for more money.
Well, this, of course, appropriation bill for next year, but they're actually saying, whoops, sorry, last year we went over. Now 26 billion Hong Kong dollars in the scheme of Hong Kong budgetary issues is not a crazy amount of money, given how much the Hong Kong...
Do you know the breakdown of this 26 billion?
They just... 26 billion, no matter how you allocate it, it's across the board, they went over by $26 billion. It's not like they all of a sudden had one thing that was $26 billion they didn't expect. It was just bits and pieces here and there, right, that added up to $26 billion, and they just kind of say, oh, whoops, sorry, quick, pass the bill, done. Let's move on.
Okay.
I think for those that are concerned about Hong Kong's budgetary discipline, this is one to watch and see if this becomes a norm or if they really rein it in this year and stick to the plan. So that is going to be really interesting, I think.
But I think traditionally the Treasury has been very, very anxious about overspending.
Yes.
And it's basically you have to spend money consciously is by the basic law. I mean, you have to spend it conservatively.
Bill 107, you have to keep the government spending in line with the growth of the economy and not run deficits. So, that tradition you're talking about started in the 1960s under Sir John Copperthwaite, who used to reward bureaucrats for underspending their budgets.
Yeah.
The only place in the world, with bureaucrats, they're like, you didn't spend your budget? Bravo. And that mindset really got into Hong Kong, and the question is if it's changing.
Okay.
Now, we did run deficits under Tung Chee-hwa a couple of years. Everybody freaked out, and we went away from that. But I think it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this type of, to see if this becomes a norm or if it's a one.
And then
yes.
One more.
The other one is that there's something that was fairly routine at Harbour Times. We wrote about this in our launch issue, had 2 articles about it, and it's something called the Tax Information Exchange Agreement. This is enabling legislation for the Hong Kong government to take requests from primarily the U.S. government and go to the banks to get information about people's bank accounts and hand it over to the U.S. government.
Yeah, we talked about that 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
When the Snowden case broke out.
Exactly, and this is why I think it should still be in play, or it should still be interesting, is because Hong Kong has double taxation agreements with other countries that already allow this. So this TIEA, technically it applies for everybody who's a signatory, but really it's about the Americans. And Hong Kong didn't really have any way to resist this. There was no moral high ground. But now, with the Snowden case, I'm surprised that somebody didn't stand up and say, should we really be handing more information over to the Americans, given what we know about how they have been keeping tabs on us, what we don't know about how they've been keeping tabs on us, because for all the requests the Hong Kong government has put out to the U.S., I don't know that they've gotten any answers. Right? The U.S. is still all bent out of shape about Snowden and hasn't recognized that we have a reason to be bent out of shape about them spying on us. I'm really surprised that none of our legislators stood up and said, wait a second, let's put a stop on this TIEA until we get some answers out of the Americans, because ultimately they're the ones that want this. Every other major trading partner we have an agreement in place through a DTA.
But why is that? Why do you think is that the case? I mean, they don't comprehend that this TIEA is so important to Hong Kong?
I think it's a missed opportunity, for Hong Kong to stand up and say, why do we have to be in such a hurry on this? Now, again, like I said, we wrote about it and said that the reason Hong Kong had to do it was just realpolitik. Right. You had to, because otherwise the Americans were going to blacklist you.
So
maybe.
Obviously, I mean, I don't know what the Democrats camp, but the pro-establishment camp basically can toss the line you have just said.
Yeah, pretty much. Who knows, maybe between now and Wednesday somebody will stand up and say, wait a second, normally this is a rubber stamp procedure. However, maybe we should take until September until we get some answers out of the Americans. Maybe somebody will watch this show and get that idea. We'll have to see.
Okay, then 6 bills altogether.
Those are the 6. Yes.
Okay. What else? I mean,
what else is coming up?
In LegCo, yeah.
Thursday, 9:30 in the morning. LegCo Council meeting for the Chief Executive question and answer. That's a more open thing. We don't know exactly what the questions are going to be yet, but I would expect political reform, stamp duty, landfills, new territory development, talking about this new settlement they want to do out by Fan Ling.
Yeah.
I could see all that coming up for questioning with the Chief Executive, all hot issues. And one more.
Not the July 1st demonstration?
The July 1st demonstration goes to political reform.
Okay.
That's why they have the July 1st demonstration. Is all
obviously he is trying to delay his answer about political reform and constitutional reform.
Yeah. In our issue that came out, it's on the website, we had a great article by Johnny Lau, and he really kind of picks it apart from the Beijing perspective and has a look at it. And he says, on his take was that he thought people in Beijing were much more surprised at the strength of the march this year. There was a question, because we have the march every year, and it's notable, but usually quite predictable. But this year there was this extra little frisson of, Occupy Central. Are they going to make it a test run? Is there going to be some civil disobedience? And it all turned out pretty orderly. But apparently there's been a lot of questions around what level of strength this gives to the pro-democratic forces in their push for political reform. And I think we might get a little sense of that on Thursday, depending on how aggressive the questioning is. The Democrats have a good case to make that people are still very interested in this issue.
But the EXCO convener, W.K. Lam, has already said in one of the broadcast shows, saying that having a lot of people asking for constitutional reform does not mean that there's only one solution. There could be many solutions as well. Yeah,
I think a lot of the people right now are just asking to begin the consultation process. Right, and it has been widely discussed. Everyone's saying, "Listen, if we want to do this by 2017, we got to get things going now." And the question is that process going to start now, or is there going to be more and more delay? Like Johnny Lau points out in our article, he says, Beijing, of course, is not monolithic on this. There's kind of the dominant, what he calls the mainstream voices that have a way of thinking about Hong Kong and our democratic development, but then he calls them the off-mainstream voices, the beginning of another discussion with a minority of people that may come to dominate the discussion, and we'll have to watch and see how that goes.
But I think what WK is saying is that even with such a large turnout on July 1st, that doesn't mean a lot of the political parties has gained support from the citizen. I think he is trying to explain that, which from my observation, that might be the case. A lot of them are just expressing their views. That doesn't mean that they believe the political parties they support can help them. I mean, there's a discrepancy, there's a gap there.
Absolutely. July 1st, a lot of people come out in a lot of different issues. As I mentioned in my op-eds, they came out for gay rights, animal rights, housing issues.
Poverty issues.
The march this year was kicked off by cyclists who want more cycling rights in Hong Kong. It's got to be a bit of a grab bag of different issues. So I think that'll be interesting. There's one other thing I would love to see people asking about at the Q&A, and it's something that relates to what you and I do.
On Thursday.
Yeah. And that is a report that just came out, I think yesterday, from the Hong Kong Journalists Association. And they were talking about the status of press and press freedom in Hong Kong. One of the things they had a real issue with was the fact that they're saying this has been the worst year since the handover for cabinet ministers, the various secretaries, not facing the press, issuing written statements. Not coming out.
Just writing on blogs and putting it on the website, issuing press statements.
Journalists go to them and say, we'd like to do an interview, and they're like, send your questions, we'll send you a written response. I've had some experience with that myself. Of course, you'd love to get face-to-face. I'm sure you'd love to have them come down here and be on the show. Some are certainly better than others. I sat in at a session with Matthew Chung, Secretary for Labor and Welfare, and it was run by a group called CDI, and they had groups from, it was about 40 different community groups. And I mean, he was there for a good 3 hours answering questions, off the cuff, seemed to have all the numbers at his fingertips. He was pretty good, but that's quite rare. And I think that, hopefully this report, if we get some questions about it, if it gets a little bit of airplay, people like you and I, it'll make it easier for us to, kind of get a better sense of where the government's going if they spend more face time with us.
I mean, that's... how do you read this phenomenon from the Hong Kong Journalists Association?
Well, I think they're probably experiencing the same thing that I have, because as a journalist, you want to get the real deal. You want to get more interesting and more in-depth discussions. And when you get something back in written form, maybe you can pull a couple of quotes out of it, but it lacks that real something that lets you know what's really going on. And when you're trying to put together a well-developed, detailed story about what's going on in the future of Hong Kong, which is what we try to do, it's difficult to get it from an official statement.
All right. By reading this phenomenon, there might be two explanations, or even more. But from my perspective is that the not willing may come from the minister himself, because he doesn't want to face the media that often.
Yep.
That's one way of looking at it. That's possibly what the Hong Kong Journalists Association is trying to say. But there might be another explanation, is that somebody is being too protective.
Well, that could be.
Yeah. It could be his press officer, it could be his other colleagues, or it could be someone more superior. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the chief secretary or the chief executive said that, well, maybe you should duck this one. I mean, you don't know. Maybe someone is being overly protective. Yeah. But the problem is, the more you protect the minister, the less opportunity, or the fewer opportunities, he get the chance to practice and face the press.
Yeah.
Which makes them more timid, rather than more seasoned as a politician.
Absolutely.
Which is only bad for the administration.
Ideally, you'd pick somebody who was a good communicator from the get-go, but if they're skilled in other areas, maybe you got to let them get a little bit of learning experience.
Yeah. So definitely, regardless of which explanation, they have to be more open and reach out more, engage more. I thought this is what C.Y. Leung's promise when he became the chief executive. He said he will reach out more.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right now, I've picked up on an old...
The statistics is not working to his favor.
Not looking good. But hopefully, maybe as the administration gets a little more experience, they will start to open up a little bit. We can only hope. And in particular, if the HKJA has made it explicit, which they have, maybe we'll see some more action on this front.
Yeah, hopefully. So they definitely have to face the media more.
It would probably help if our chief executive had a press officer that was in the position for a couple of years and got more comfortable themselves so they could help their colleagues. But I guess we'll have to wait for that.
Or even if they do not face the press themselves, I mean, I think in different cases around the world, they always have a spokesperson to answer questions, at least as the minimum, rather than just publish it.
Yeah.
As a press statement. I mean,
you
don't even see a face. I mean, that's the problem.
I've been advised and picked up on recently an old BBC show called In the Thick of It, where it talks.
Lovely.
Guy portrays.
Where are you up to? Season 4?
Just first season.
Oh, I just finished season 4.
Well, for the people watching, we should tell them
we should have a separate show.
Have a separate show, just analyzing
on the thick of it,
or maybe do a Cantonese version.
Yeah.
Where the guy that plays Alistair Campbell, who was Tony Blair's press secretary, he just terrorizes the entire political and media establishment. He is ferocious and vicious and foul-mouthed. And in Hong Kong, it seems like the people that we have in our administration, they're very they're certainly not of that aggressive, masters and commanders of the media that you see in something like that. I'm from Canada. An old buddy of mine from university, he was the Prime Minister's head of communications. Certainly more congenial than the British version, but he was certainly out there, and he wasn't afraid to get out and go toe-to-toe with the media when needs be.
The Canadian press is way less vicious.
Very gentle.
Way less vicious than the British.
Yes. They're very gentle by comparison. But maybe our press secretaries, we need to see a more aggressive or somebody who's a little more hands-on, and that might help our secretaries.
Speaking of which, the integrated, the IC, the integrated communicator for the chief executive office, has resigned, and there's no replacement yet.
Again, I'd be interested, but the thing is, where do they draw the talent from? In our second issue, we challenged people and said, "Do you have recommendations for the chief executive's next press secretary and or information officer?" Nobody came back to us. Nobody seems to have any ideas.
All right. Well,
one more
we
thing,
still have Friday.
Yeah, one more thing on the calendar. Friday's always interesting because that's the meeting of the finance committee where the big money hits the table.
Landfill.
$7 billion will be approved for the expansion of the out in the new territories, Northeast landfill. Of course, the Chung Kwan O one got shot down by Ledgeco. So $7 billion for the extension of that one. Tuen Mun, there'll be $35 million for consulting on how to do that one. I say I should be in the consulting business if there's $35 million for that. But geez, that's what I should be doing. The other thing that'll happen in addition to the landfill approvals is the pay rise for civil servants. Government held the line on this one. There was no moving them. Regardless of all the press, they just done. So,
well, interestingly, for the landfill, you see Lau Wong Fat
yes,
has been quite aggressive.
Yes,
in expressing his viewpoints. I mean, that's worth a look at it. I mean, normally he is a very good friend of the administration. He did not say he endorsed this plan at this stage. What's your take on that?
A lot of people are really angry about this one, and the way that our legislature is constructed, even the DAB has to be in opposition sometimes, right? They can't originate bills. All they can do is say no. So whether all of our different political parties have to get behind, if there's something that everybody's on board, they have to get on board too, right? Otherwise, they risk alienating their grassroots. So they have to show they have a little bit of independence. Otherwise, why elect them? So this, nobody wants to live next to a garbage dump. Tensions are going to escalate around this. Incinerators. In our issue this week, we have a letter to the editor that takes up a whole page. It was quite detailed about the people at Green Island Cement are saying, we want to build an incinerator. We want to help you with this project. Just let us. And so that's quite an interesting one as well. And I think all these different issues around waste reduction, they're all, there's tension on all sides. Something's going to have to give.
Okay, so we have a very fruitful week ahead, and marching into the final week of LASHCO, we'll have the 6 bills coming up on Wednesday. Chief Executive will be in LASHCO on Thursday.
Yes.
And finally, Friday, we have the big landfill battle, which a lot of, at least 2 legislators said he is considering doing filibuster.
Yes.
That too.
Return to the filibuster.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if the landfill thing doesn't get sorted, I'm sure there'll continue to be controversy, but man, summertime, with the garbage stinking to high heaven, you don't want to have that one dragging out all summer.
I have a different take on whether they should do the landfill one by one. And then the incinerator is a long way ahead before the debate. I mean, they actually prolonged the debate without giving a very comprehensive picture at the solution. It's not a very good way to communicate as well. So I think, let's see what actually will happen this week. And thanks, Andrew, again. And, next week, we'll discuss more about the final week of the Legislative Council. But before I say goodbye to you, anything on weekend that you think worth mentioning to our audience here?
On the weekend coming up?
Yeah.
No, I think it's going to be a pretty quiet one. Last weekend was the exciting one with the big anti-stamp duty rally. I was down for that. It was really interesting to see. It's a different kind of protester because there's a lot of professionals. And younger professionals that have been drawn into the industry in recent years and really concerned about their livelihoods. Real estate agents don't always get a lot of sympathy from the public, but I think that with the number of legislators from across the board coming on board, this one's going to be an interesting one to follow. Okay, well, let me conclude this week by saying that I think the word for this week will be upfront, not confront. Yep.
Not confront, but upfront.
Okay.
I mean, you have to come up front and explain your policy. You have to come up front to face the villagers.
Yep.
Including maybe Lau Wong Fat.
Maybe Lau Wong Fat's got to be
including long hair.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think,
maybe even the media.
Of course, the media.
And of course, the media.
So upfront is the word for this week.
All right. Thanks a lot, Vincent.
Thanks.
Cheers.